Good evening, everyone. Ian Patrick here. Welcome back from the holidays. Christmas is over, New Year's is over, and here I am back with another review for you all. And tonight we're doing something a little different. So recently, I have gotten very interested in purchasing VHS tapes. You know, I grew up during VHS. I love VHS. So I've really been enjoying purchasing old films in VHS format, such as what we're watching tonight, The End of the Sixth Happiness. Now, I had never seen this movie, so I thought, well, Ingrid Bergman, I like her. Although my hopes of this film, just from the cover of it, were not very high. Now, my initial thought was, oh God, she's going to be playing, an Asian woman, and she's going to talk with a funny accent, but that wasn't the case, thankfully. However, I ended up not liking this movie too much, and we'll get into it here in a bit. But yeah, I've been really having fun purchasing these old VHS tapes. They're super cheap right now. Like, I got this for 50 cents. So it's just a new fun hobby that I really enjoy doing. Now, I apologize for my voice. I've been sick for about a week now, but I've been getting better. In fact, I hope I look a little bit healthier because I've been working out for about 2 months now. I was looking a little chunky in my previous videos, I know. But anyway, let's get into the review. So tonight's review is The End of the Sixth Happiness, and it came out in 1958. It's a 20th century Fox picture, and Ingrid Bergman stars in it. She plays a true character from real life named Gladys Aylward, and we also have Kurt Jurgens, I believe a German actor who plays a Eurasian Chinese man. He's half white, half Chinese, and oh my God, I hated his character. Is so stupid. It's just another way of Hollywood from back then putting a white guy in to play an Asian person. I should, put a little flash warning. Like, I do not care when, from back then, it's a different era. I do not judge back then. I enjoy movies for being good. And if an actor's good, then I enjoy that. But I did not like Kurt Jurgens' character and how he played his character at all. So I don't judge for white actors playing Asians or Hispanics or whatever, because it was just a different time. I've talked about that in plenty of other Native American films, such as Donna Reed playing Sacagawea. But anyway, I digress. We also have Robert Donnet, who plays sort of this village Mandarin old times leader, another case of a white guy playing a very Asian character. His character was a little bit more tolerable than Kurt Jurgens, but again, it was his accent was better, but it was also silly. This was directed by Mark Robson. I believe he was Canadian. Couldn't tell you too much about him, but this was filmed in that typical late 1950s cinemascope camera in color, which I am not too fond of, honestly, films filmed in that with that camera. It's not my style. In fact, I don't typically film late 50s, early 60s films. Literally, the only reason is because I picked up this VHS and thought it looked interesting. So, Ingrid Bergman, like I said, she plays Gladys, but her name in China is Jenai. And I cringe every single time Kurt Jurgens says Jenai, and when Robert Donut says Jenai, I'm sorry, I just cringe every time. But her name, Jenai, means the one who loves people. So, as I said, my first thought was this is going to be crummy, just because I was worried she was going to be playing a Chinese woman. But thankfully, that wasn't the case. But this takes place during 1931, the Japanese invasion into China. If you recall from history, the Japanese were pretty brutal to the Chinese when they invaded in that time. But let's start more with the Gladys's plot because it starts out in an interesting way. In fact, I sort of enjoyed the beginning the most because she is just this normal poor woman who lives, I believe it was in London or just a British town, and her dream is to go to China. Her dream is to move to China. It's not really specific why. She doesn't really give a specific reason. Kind of strange. But she wants to be a missionary in China, but she's told that she lacks the education, the experience. She's not good enough to be a missionary there. So she thinks, well, you know what? I can go on my own. I'll just figure it out. I'll just go to. She's obsessed with China, and so she becomes a maid, and little by little, she makes a little bit of money, and she puts about £1 down. I think she needs around £40 to get her ticket, her train ticket, the Trans-Siberian train ticket, all the way from Europe through Russia all the way to China. Even though there's a combat going between the Russians and China on the border, it's dangerous. But she little by little she makes £40, and when she's a maid, she even sort of not steals, but borrows a book of her master. She was reading all these books on China, as many as she can, and he catches her doing that, and he says, you know, you could have just asked, I would have let you borrow the books. And he doesn't understand, well, why do you want to go to China? And she doesn't really explain it very well then either. She just, says, it's a calling to me. She can't explain it. And he says, well, I have one contact over there. And that contact is a woman named Sarah Lanson. And she's an older woman. She has an inn there, basically. And so she writes a letter to her, and eventually Gladys gets on her way. She gets on the train, and her character, I know it's a film and you're not supposed to think too hard about it, but it's her her character was just so careless to the point where she's either very brave, or you can think she's just very stupid, to just be I'm this attractive woman, I'm gonna hop on a train and go through Russia and not think they're going to do anything bad to me. In fact, I like the scene when they do go through Russia and the men kind of get too close, and in fact they're going to kick her off, but thankfully she is witty enough to convince them to let her go to China. So that was interesting, but you be the judge. Is she just super brave or super stupid? But she does eventually make it to China, of course. And she joins this Sarah Lanson character, older woman, and she's very friendly. Right away, they're sort of kindred spirits, and they are working on the inn together, really building it up. And their plan is not only to serve food, but also to the traveling Chinamen who come through, to tell stories to them while they eat. What kind of stories are they going to tell? They're going to tell Bible stories. This is sort of their way of doing missionary work. You would never see that in a movie today. I'm just saying, you wouldn't. But I really like that, that there's also this Christian aspect to the film in the background, but it's not stuffed down your throat if that's not your sort of thing. So they tell stories about Jesus and baby Jesus while these men eat, and they seem to really enjoy the stories, which makes it worth her time and Sarah Lanson's time. So right away she befriends the town, and she fits right in, and she meets the Mandarin leader, played by Robert Donat, and they have an interesting dynamic, because she's sort of this aggressive woman who gets what she desires all the time, and he kind of calms her down. You're not from here, you're still living under my rules. And eventually throughout the film they truly become friends, and I'll talk about that later. But they have a good, I would say, really good chemistry between them. However, she also meets Captain Lin, Kurt Jurgens' character, and his accent as a Chinese man is just awful. He was a big reason why I just didn't like the movie. I thought their chemistry was extremely weak. These are all my personal thoughts. Maybe you all loved their chemistry, but I thought it was very silly. And like I said, every time he says Jedi, I cringed. Like, it's just awful. And they, of course, there's this tension between them because he can't admit his love because he's this half white, half Chinese guy, and he feels like he can't be honest. And also, he's of the Republic of China, man. He's in the army, and he's got to be tough. But it's back and forth. They're gonna end up eventually. It's just such a cliche tension relationship. Really, it is. And then I'm just reading my notes here. But eventually, Lanson, the older woman who she's working for, does pass away accidentally because she's working up the hotel, and she accidentally dies. And this leaves sort of Gladys, or Jenai, in a predicament because she can't just take over the inn. So she becomes a shoe inspector, or not shoe, but foot inspector, which I thought this part of the film was really interesting because China little girls were foot bound, and until basically they were old, and the new Republic of China wanted to get rid of that old fashioned way of suppressing little girls and women in general into obeying men. So her job was to go around the little villages and make sure that men were not foot binding the little girls and their daughters and wives anymore. And really good scene. In fact, that's probably one of the best scenes of the film, if not the best. So note that scene when the little old woman comes in and she's going to show her feet, but Gladys is just she can't handle it. She's too weak now. But that's a great scene because then they start taking off the bound shoes and off the little girls. It's a great scene. So she's a foot inspector. She really gains the trust of the Mandarin leader even more now, and of Captain Lin, because she's with Captain Lin during her little travels as the foot inspector. And this is, I think, truly when he starts to fall in love with her. In the background, there's also the growing tensions with Japan that they're going to invade. And there's also, of course, this love between the captain and Jenai. And eventually, before Japan invades, there's a romantic night because she's wearing a beautiful traditional Chinese gown, red, and the captain just can't keep his eyes off her, and he has to confess his love, which she says she loves him back. But this is when the realities of war happen, the sadness of war, and basically their little town is bombed by the Japanese, and the little kids have to run, and the older people are hurt, and a lot of people in town are killed, and the life that they knew is gone in seconds. So then this is sort of the climax and sort of the purpose of making the film. The little kids of the town, at this point there's about 100. They're running out of food. They're running out of options to do what do we do with the kids, because the Japanese are on their way, and if you go a certain way you're going to bump into them too, and they'll for sure be slaughtered by the Japanese, because again, the Japanese were horrible to the Chinese. And so Jenai I hate saying that. So Gladys takes it upon herself. She says, this is the reason God brought me here, was to save these little kids. And so she gathers up the 100 kids with help from another Chinese man, and they take the kids on a long trek through the mountains and through the streams and rivers, and they have to dodge the Japanese at some points, and they're running out of food, and eventually they do make it to civilization at the end, and she saves the 100 children. And like I said earlier, this is based on a true story where Gladys Aylward really did do that. In fact, she was still alive at the time this movie was made, so she was a true hero for those 100 or so Chinese kids. So it was a beautiful ending. The ending almost made me give this another half a star, but I just can't because I just did not like the movie that much. I know this typically has around a 3 stars in different websites and books, but I also just didn't like how Gladys, basically every situation she walked into sort of was easy for her. There wasn't too much hardship for her. So I just didn't really latch on to any of the characters. I didn't like any of the chemistry except for between Gladys and the Mandarin leader. But I'm going to give this movie a 2 stars for a lot of reasons. Basically, a lot of it was just I didn't like the film, and I didn't like how I don't know how to explain it. I didn't like how she, like I said, everything just came easy to her, and she just sort of became the savior of the town, and it just seemed unrealistic. And also, I hated Kurt Jurgens' character so much, and the romance was just so weak. I thought the music was crummy in this film. The music did not match the movie at all. And also, I just don't like the CinemaScope camera. I just don't. But hey, we watched it for, I said 50 cents earlier. I actually got it for like 33 cents to be precise. So 2 stars. It's been a while since we've seen a movie I don't like that bad. I'll probably never see it again. Maybe one day. I don't recommend it, but if you have a fascination with China, then I would definitely recommend it. However, I love the Paul Muni movie. I think The Good Earth, that's a great China movie, or movie based on China. So I have some pictures to show you before I read some history to you all. There is our wonderful Jedi. And there's basically the cast. And like I said, the film itself was received pretty well, even back then. Some more pictures. Oh, look at that beautiful romance. It got really good reviews back then as well. It was well received. I just didn't like it. I don't know what to tell you all. I would love to hear your all's opinions of what you think of the film. Maybe you guys really like it, and that's okay, because I think it's interesting with movies that get like a 3 stars and I just really don't like it. I think that's good. It creates more interesting of reviews, but sometimes people get angry. There's some more good pictures with the little kids especially. And there she is on set with the producer of the film, her good friend Alan Burgess. So now I'm going to read to you some quick history from her autobiography. Let's see. So at the start of filming, Ingrid, she wrote a letter to Formosa, which is where the real Gladys Aylward was staying, and it said this. So she wrote this to the true, real Aylward. Dear Miss Aylward, it is so strange to realize that you actually exist. You are not a figure of fantasy that I make believe to say your words and feel your feelings. But I have not met you. Therefore, this is difficult. How I regret that we did not go to Formosa so I could have had your help. You know, they thought of making the picture in Formosa first. But I want you to know, although you will find many occasions to wonder why you did this, why we did this or that, we are always trying to be throughout honest, and that the picture is made with great affection and respect for you. But after all, it is a movie, and to become entertainment, certain liberties must be taken. My personal admiration for you and your work is enormous, and I only hope the picture will be worthy of you. Warmest regards. So that was a really nice letter of Ingrid Bergman to write to Gladys Aylward. So Gladys received the letter but did not answer it, from her point of view, for a very good reason. So basically the reason is because they were going to film this in Formosa, and the real Gladys had been making like designs like for the set and for the actors, and they were going to use lots of different extras who actually lived there. And then the national Chinese government, here it says, in exile in Formosa, had demanded to see the script, and they basically complained about how they were portraying China in the film. So 20th Century Fox pulled out of filming it actually there so that they could make the film without restrictions. And so a lot of money and time had been wasted by Gladys Aylward and the people who had been building the set and all that, and the the outfits. So she was extremely upset about that, and didn't want anything to do with the movie anymore. And they ended up filming the movie in Wales, in an area called Snowdonia, a mountainous region. So excuse me, guys, sorry. Like I said, I've been sick. Here's another interesting point. On a tour to Japan some 10 years later, Ingrid made a special side trip to Formosa to try to meet Gladys Aylward. She arrived too late. Gladys had died 10 days earlier. Ingrid sent a sad letter back to her England to Alan Burgess. Sorry, my throat. I am here finally after all these years, and Gladys Aylward is gone. It is so sad. This afternoon I went with a friend to see Gladys's home. Her room was just as she had left it. I was terribly moved by the humble surroundings. I met many of her children. It is so strange, and it breaks my heart that I should have missed her by so little. She worked until her very last day. What a magnificent woman. What are the odds that she would go and she would miss her just by 10 days, not even 2 weeks? And that's another thing that Gladys did. She adopted. I better end this review before I lose my voice, but she adopted a lot of children, which was a beautiful thing also. And they showed that in the film as well, but didn't like the movie too much. Maybe you completely disagree with me. So, go ahead and watch it and let me know. Or maybe I'm right on the money with this one. But until next time, everyone, thank you all for watching. And be sure to send more recommendations of movies to watch.